Every man who ever dared to think deeply eventually thought something that broke him. Nietzsche went mad, not from weakness, from the weight of what he understood. Socrates walked into his own execution, not because he had to, but because he refused to betray the thought. Descartes sat alone, in a room, in front of a fire, and doubted everything, including whether the room itself existed. Schopenhauer concluded, after decades of the most serious philosophical inquiry in history, that existence is fundamentally suffering. These were not fragile men. These were the sharpest minds in all of human history. And yet, one thought destroyed all of them. What was that thought, and why is it already forming somewhere in the back of your mind? We live in a world that celebrates thinking. We call our greatest minds visionaries, intellectuals, philosophers. We put their quotes on Instagram. We print their words on motivational posters. We reduce centuries of suffering into a 3-line caption. But nobody tells you the other side of the story. Nobody tells you that real thinking, ruthless, unfiltered, uncompromising thinking, has a cost. Most men never pay that cost, because most men never think deeply enough to reach the edge. They think about their careers, their relationships, their reputation, their comfort. They think, but only up to the point where thinking remains safe. The men we are about to discuss did not stop at safe. They kept going, past comfort, past certainty, past the last boundary that most minds respect. And what they found on the other side was not enlightenment. It was something far more dangerous. It was the truth. Friedrich Nietzsche was born in 1844, the son of a Lutheran pastor, a man raised inside the ordered, sacred architecture of religious certainty. By the age of 30, he had dismantled it completely, not out of rebellion, not out of arrogance, but because his mind, when applied honestly to reality, could not reach any other conclusion. He wrote 3 words that would echo through the next 2 centuries of human thought. God is dead. But here is what those 3 words actually meant, and what almost no one who quotes them actually understands. Nietzsche was not celebrating. He was not an atheist writing a victory speech. He was terrified. Because if God is dead, then so is the foundation of every moral system, every source of meaning, every reason why suffering has ever been bearable. He asked, how shall we comfort ourselves? This was not freedom. This was the most catastrophic philosophical discovery possible. If there is no God, there is no inherent meaning, no divine justice, no ultimate purpose, no reason why anything matters. And Nietzsche understood. Most men cannot survive this thought. Most men will simply replace God with something else. Nationalism, money, ideology, pleasure, anything to avoid confronting the void. But Nietzsche kept thinking, and the thought consumed him. In January 1889, in Turin, he collapsed in the street. He never recovered his sanity. He spent the last 11 years of his life in silence. The man who had seen furthest into the abyss, finally consumed by it. The thought did not destroy his body. It destroyed the architecture of the self that had contained it. Socrates never wrote a single word. Everything we know about him came through the men who followed him, who watched him question generals and politicians and priests, and watched the city of Athens slowly realize what he was doing. He was not teaching, he was exposing. His method was devastatingly simple. He would approach a man considered wise, a politician, a soldier, a craftsman, and ask, what is courage? What is justice? What is virtue? The man would answer confidently, and Socrates would ask one more question, and another, until the man had no answers left, until the certainty dissolved, until what remained was only the uncomfortable, devastating realization that the man had never actually understood the thing he had built his entire identity upon. Athens responded by putting him on trial, charged with corrupting the youth, charged with impiety against the gods. He was found guilty, sentenced to death. His friends arranged an escape. He refused, because to flee would be to betray the thought. It would be to admit, with his own actions, that survival mattered more than truth. He drank the hemlock, calmly, in 399 BC. The most dangerous man in any society is not the violent man. It is the man who asks honest questions in public and refuses to stop. René Descartes decided, at some point in the winter of 1641, to destroy everything he believed, not metaphorically, systematically. He sat alone, in a room, in front of a fire, and he asked himself, what can I know with absolute certainty? Can I trust my senses? No, the senses deceive. You have seen things that were not there. You have heard sounds in silence. Can I trust my memories? No, memories are reconstructions, not recordings. Can I trust mathematics? What if there is a force, powerful, deceptive, that distorts your perception of even 2 plus 2? He stripped away every certainty, one by one, until there was almost nothing left. And then he found the one thought that could not be doubted. I think, therefore I am. The act of doubting requires a doubter. The very existence of the thought proves the existence of the thinker. This was the foundation, the only certainty, a single thread over the abyss. But understand what Descartes actually experienced in that room. He did not arrive at his famous conclusion feeling triumphant. He arrived there having dismantled every other pillar of reality he had ever stood upon. The thought that philosophy required him to think nearly cost him reality itself. Arthur Schopenhauer looked at the world, honestly, without sentimentality, without the comfort of religion or ideology, and he reached a conclusion that he spent the rest of his life trying to live with. He said, human existence is driven not by reason, but by a blind, insatiable, irrational force. He called it the will. The will does not care about your happiness. It does not care about your suffering. It simply drives you to want, to strive, to desire. And the moment one desire is satisfied, another takes its place. You want. You suffer in the wanting. You get. The satisfaction lasts for a moment. Then you want again. Then you suffer again. This is not a cycle that leads anywhere. This is the architecture of existence itself. He was right, and being right changed nothing, which, in its own way, was the most devastating conclusion of all. So, Nietzsche went mad, Socrates was executed, Descartes nearly dissolved into philosophical paralysis, Schopenhauer lived in the shadow of his own conclusions for decades. The thought destroyed them, or did it? Because here is what actually happened. The thought did not destroy the men. The thought destroyed who they were before they had it. It destroyed the comfortable, unexamined version of themselves, the version that operated on inherited assumptions, the version that took certainty on credit. And what remained was something far more real. Nietzsche's madness produced the most psychologically penetrating work in the history of Western philosophy. Socrates' execution made him the most remembered human being in the ancient world. His ideas outlasted Athens itself. Descartes' radical doubt became the foundation of modern scientific thought. Schopenhauer's brutal honesty about suffering directly influenced Tolstoy, Freud, and Nietzsche himself. His pain became the lens through which an entire century understood itself. The thought did not end them, it immortalized them, because they did not run from it. Most men will go their entire lives without encountering the thought, not because they are not capable, but because everything in modern life, the noise, the distraction, the endless content, exists precisely to ensure they never find the silence in which it lives. The thought only comes to those who are willing to sit with discomfort long enough for it to arrive. And when it does, you will not feel enlightened. You will feel the ground disappear. That is not a warning, that is the beginning.